So if you build marketplaces or directories for clients using the Webflow and Airtable stack, then you might want to build a system that allows your clients to safely manage their site without you needing to give them access to the Webflow CMS or any Airtable bases. And in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly what I do. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey friends, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So the other week I got an email from someone who is building marketplaces and directories for clients using the Webflow and Airtable stack, the same stack that I used to create the Unicorn Factory. And unfortunately, they ran into a situation where their clients went into their Airtable base and basically made changes that ruined a whole bunch of workflows that they had set up. And that is something that I hear quite a bit. And so one thing that I decided to do quite a while ago that basically made sure that I could give my clients control over their sites without me needing to give them access to the actual Airtable base or Webflow CMS is to create a custom Airtable interface for them. Now, just in case you are brand new to Airtable Interfaces, it's a feature that Airtable released a few months ago that allows you to turn your Airtable bases into nice, intuitive, and easy to use interfaces. Now, the main reason why I love Airtable Interfaces is because it allows you to share access to your Airtable base with people who might not necessarily know how Airtable works. And you don't have to go through the entire process of explaining it to them. By simply giving them access to their interface, they'll be able to manage your Airtable base without actually needing to log into the screen. I think particularly if you're using Airtable to trigger workflows in tools like Make or Zapier, you want to make sure that clients can't accidentally change things like views that then might automatically trigger the workflows. So besides making it a lot easier on your clients and your teammates, you're also ensuring that you don't accidentally break workflows by having clients changing your setup. So that's what I'm going to be showing you today. I'm going to show you how I connect my Airtable interface to workflows that I have inside of Make so that I can then easily allow my team members to update information inside of my directory or marketplace. The example that I'm going to be using today to show you how you can create a custom interface is by going over this real estate property website that we are going to have inside of Webflow. And what I want to allow my customers to do is to simply update the square footage, the listing price, and maybe even things like the number of bedrooms and bathrooms. And so what we're going to be doing is we are simply going to be jumping into our interface. We're going to start by creating a brand new interface, and then we're going to set up a workflow inside of Airtable automations that triggers a workflow that then starts an automation that we will then also set up inside of Make. Okay, one last thing before we get into it, if you want to learn more about building marketplaces with no-code tools, then subscribe to the channel, and I'll also leave a link to a little webinar that I set up where I show you how I created the Unicorn Factory, which is my freelancer marketplace from scratch without me knowing how to code, without me hiring developers and all that fun stuff. With all of that being said, let's dive straight into it. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. Now, obviously, I just want to reiterate that giving your clients access to something like this is perfectly fine if they have a basic understanding of how workflows works, how Airtable works, and all those types of things. But I have just simply found that in the past, if you try to give someone a crash course in Airtable, by default, they'll start making changes that can lead to issues. And so just creating the interface just makes a bit more sense. So we're going to start off by clicking on the interface tab, and we're going to start by creating our interface. Now, Airtable has a lot of great resources that explains what's going on. So I'm going to be going through this fast. We're going to create one which is going to be called our real estate home page. And this is the interface that I will then share with my client. Now, there are a lot of pre-built layouts that you can use. The one that I'm going to be using for this particular example is the record review layout, but have a little bit of a look through it to see whether or not there's something that's more applicable to your use case. So once I have set up my layout, then it's going to ask me what table I want to pull the information from. And so there are a whole bunch of things that you can do with it. You can first of all select whatever table you want. So if you want to have a view of your contacts table, you can just go ahead and create that in there. But for this example, I'm going to be using the properties table. You can also apply filters and sorts if you want. So I'm not going to do it for this particular example, but depending on how you want to configure your interface, you'll already start having quite a bit of flexibility. Now, As soon as we have done that, we can then start specifying what information we want to display in our layout. And by default, you'll see that there are going to be some fields that have been turned on and some that are off. So let's say, for example, we want to also display our client interest field. Now, then all you need to do is just switch on the toggle and you'll be good to go. And you can just go through the entire process of switching on the values that you feel are necessary to have in the interface. Sometimes your clients will actually specify it. Other times you might just want to decide. And so I've just gone ahead and added a few fields that I think are important for the interface. And as soon as I'm done with that, I'm ready to move on with it. Now, before we finish our setup of our interface, it is important to give it good names because obviously we want to make it easier for our clients to navigate around our view. But as soon as we've got our table, we have got our first interface set up. Now, important things to know about the interface. If you realize that you actually forgot to add a field, then you can very easily change what information sits inside of here by clicking on the properties record list and then just simply scrolling down to fields that you may have missed. And so you might want to have something like the stage. And as soon as you see that, you'll be able to just drag it into your interface. If you want to remove a field, all you need to do is just click on the actual element, then click on the rubbish bin, and you'll be good to go. Okay, so as soon as we've got our layout configured, then what we need to do is we need to decide what fields we want to allow our team members or clients to update. And by default, all of the fields that you will add will be set to view only. And this might be good if you don't actually want your client to change a particular field, but if you do want to let them change a field, for example, the listing price, then all you need to do is just change the permission from view only to editable, and you'll see automatically how it changes and that particular field then becomes editable. And so what I'll typically do is just go through the different fields that I know they'll want to update. You can do it with drop downs, you can do it with multi-reference field or linked records as they're called inside of Airtable. And as soon as you have gone through the process of updating all of the fields that you want to allow them to control, then what we want to do is we want to give them the ability to trigger a workflow that will basically update all of this information inside of Webflow. Now, the way that we're going to do that is by clicking on the add element button and then going over to where it says all elements. Now in here, you'll see that you've got a whole bunch of different elements that you can choose from, but the one that we want to use is the button field. So what I would recommend doing is just grabbing the button field and moving it to the top. Now, as soon as you add your button, you'll see on the right side that you've got a few options that you can now configure. Now, by default, it will be set to update record, but what we want to do is we actually want to run an automation outside of Airtable. And the way that we're going to do that is by setting up a custom workflow inside of Airtable automations that will then fire a webhook for one of our make.com workflows. Now, the way that we're going to do that is we're going to simply select from the drop-down field the create new automation workflow, and we will then give it a name. And the workflow we're going to call update property in Webflow. Okay, and as soon as that happens, we can click on continue to automation, and what that will do is it will redirect us to the Airtable automations tab inside of our Airtable base. Now, because we configured this workflow from inside of Airtable Interfaces, it has already configured the trigger for us, which is when the client clicks on the button. All we need to do now is now run a step that will allow us to fire a webhook inside of make.com. Now, I am going to add the script and make the script available on my website, so you can simply copy and paste it from my website over into whatever Airtable automation base you're working on. You'll just have to go ahead and configure the variables. Okay, so I've copy and pasted the script in here, and all we really need to do now is to get our webhook URL so that we know where to send the actual information about our record. And so I'm not going to go into depth about how the script is set up. I actually have an article on my website that talks you through the step-by-step. So if you are interested in understanding in a bit more detail, you'll be able to check that out as well. But before we go ahead and run our Airtable automation, we actually also need to set up the actual workflow that we want to allow our clients to update. And so I have got an example workflow here where, first of all, our trigger is the webhook event that we're going to fire. And then as soon as that happens, we will simply look up inside of our base, which is going to be the real estate base, what the information is for our record. And so you'll be able to jump in here, you'll be able to select your table, and then you'll be able to use the record ID that we are passing through with the webhook. And then from there, you can really do whatever it is that you want. So if you want to convert Airtable Markdown into rich text, then you can do that with this step. Then you can also update an item inside of Webflow. Also, if you wanted to update some custom fields inside of MemberStack, you'll be able to do that as well. And then finally, I like to wrap up these workflows by also sending my client a custom message telling them that their record was updated. Okay, so all that's left to do now is to connect our make.com workflow with our Airtable automation. And before we do that, one thing that is important to know is because we are using the input.config function, we also actually need to define information that we want to send through about our record. Now, because inside of make.com, we're using the get a record step in order to retrieve all of the information about a particular record, we actually only need to pass through the Airtable ID. And so the way that we're going to do that is we're going to define our variable as Airtable ID, and then we're simply going to map it up with the value that sits inside of the record that we select, which in this case is going to be the Airtable record ID. What this will allow us to do is to send this Airtable ID through when we fire our webhook. And as soon as we have fired our webhook, we can simply map that Airtable ID to our get a record in Airtable step, and that will then allow us to retrieve all the information. And so the last thing that we need to do before we can test this is to grab the webhook URL that make.com gives us as soon as we create a new webhook inside of Make. So what we're going to do is we're going to simply copy this. We're then going to head over to our script and we're going to paste it into the section that says let webhook. So it will look something like this. As soon as all of that is done, all we need to do is to simply go ahead and click on run this module only and then listen for new. And then from here, all we need to do is run the test button, and that will then run a test for our workflow. And you can see based on the 200 status that we successfully sent the webhook and it was also received. And now if we jump into our workflow, you'll see that the record ID was passed through. And so now typically all of the other steps will run as well. Now, what's cool about this is because we can now also just see what would happen if we pass this through, we can actually just pass through the record ID that we would have received here, and you'll see that all of the information that currently sits inside of Airtable will be retrieved so that we can then later on use it in future steps. So now that we have set up this workflow that basically allows our customers to update Webflow items or to configure MemberStack settings from inside of the Airtable interface, then all you really need to do is just make it pretty. So I'm going to say something like update property, and then I will turn the button blue, and then all you need to do is just click on the publish button, and then you can start inviting your collaborators. And whenever they access this, they'll be able to just simply log in. They'll be able to select whatever property they want. They'll be able to change the price and then just simply click on the update property button. And that will then go ahead and start the workflow that will then automatically update everything that happens inside of your make.com workflow. So that is a really simple way that you can allow your customers or team members to update information that might be sitting across a lot of different properties by connecting your Airtable interface to different workflows that you might have set up inside of Make or inside of Zapier. There is obviously a lot of additional things that you can do with Airtable interfaces, like allowing your clients to create new properties and a whole bunch of things like that. Obviously, there's not that much time to cover all of it in this one particular video, but if there is a use case that you'd like me to go over, let me know in the comments down below. Other than that, thank you so much for sticking around for the entire video, and I'll see you back here for the next one.